I'd like to begin by expressing my deep appreciation to Kim Jong-il for his operation this morning. I think there was no better way to provide a prelude to this discussion this afternoon. I'd also like to say that in so saying, I'm not just being facetious, although I'm a little facetious from time to time. But I'm saying this because I believe that this is probably the first real test of the Obama administration on the international scene. It's a real event. It's taken place in an area which is of enormous concern to the United States of America in Southeast Asia, which is now a prime area of United States activities on a wide range of issues. It's an act of defiance. It's an act which has been publicly announced, and followed by a demonstrative firing of a missile, not a missile which can carry the payload of this weapon if it is weaponized, but nevertheless, I think the message is clear. And now I think for the first time we'll all be provided as sitting in the ring with the opportunity of seeing how the United States administration will deal with this particular challenge, and a challenge it is. I'm saying this because we are aware very much, as you all know in this hall, that North Korea is not just a player in Southeast Asia. It has been a principal player in the Middle East in the field of nuclear proliferation. And I don't believe that the Iranians would have got as far as they got without North Korean support. And this is not the only country which has received North Korean support. And therefore, the nature of the response of the Obama administration to this particular challenge will have immediate repercussions and immediate consequences and immediate, I'd say, results as far as the Middle East scene is concerned. And I don't know whether the United States is now going to say that its policy on North Korea has failed, and therefore they will immediately sit down and talk to North Korea and see what kind of inducements it can be offered in order to, for the third time, to agree to a freeze, and for a third time to go into an arrangement or an agreement of sorts. But certainly it is a subject for reflection in terms of the history of these events and this particular area of nuclear proliferation, as to whether this, shall we say, this policy of to experiment with a proliferator once, twice, three times, and then to see what happens as you go along, and each time to be surprised that the proliferator has reneged on an agreement and so forth, whether in the light of the North Korean experience it is worthwhile to repeat the experience with Iran. I think we must be very clear as to what we're talking about in terms of Iran. We're not just talking of a country which has a policy in this area, but it's a country which has been very, very active and very aggressive in its policies, not only in the field of nuclear proliferation. It is a country which has tried to flex its muscles throughout the region, not only by simply taking sides, as my friend Paolo has said, but taking sides has also meant actively aiding a side in the field of weaponry and the field of training and the like. And therefore, to some extent from Israel's point of view, what we have between Israel and Iran at the moment is an undeclared war between the two countries, undeclared because both countries do not wish to declare a war between each other for obvious reasons. But we have been at war with Iran for several years, and we have had several confrontations with them on the battlefields, both in the close proximity of Israel and in the larger areas of the Middle East, not only in Gaza, not only in Lebanon, but also reportedly in Sudan and reportedly in other places as well. Some say even North Syria. And this is a situation which we have to take into account. Looking at Iran from an Israeli perspective, the problem is not only to achieve a technical result of a no bomb. I say technical result because if all the other elements are allowed to proceed freely, and if the ultimate outcome of all the negotiations will be that the Iranians will have a bomb-minus situation, which is controlled by a set of very intricate and very, very highly technological and sophisticated means, what this means is that we are postponing the ultimate resolution of the problem, and we are entering into a field of an experiment. And the experiment is an experiment based on a reality whereby there is no trust, basic trust, between the countries of the world and Iran. Because if you need to put into place all these elements of control and of inspection, and if you have to put in such inspection in place so that if at one particular point in time the Iranians divest themselves of all this inspection, and you will have sufficient time to reorganize yourselves in order to be able to meet the contingency, what you're doing in effect is you're postponing the ultimate resolution of the problem until such time that the Iranians will, in line with their consistent behavior, they will be found wanting in the area on which it has been agreed, and then you will have to face the problem. But in the meantime, the years will go by. Maybe one administration will give way to another. Maybe the mullahs will become more democratic. Maybe religion will subside. Maybe women will be empowered all around the world. Maybe apple pie will become a staple product. And that's basically the situation that Israel is facing. And I think we have to be very clear about this. We have to understand what we're doing and what we're talking about when we're talking about Iran being under inspection, under close inspection, under very close inspection, and so forth. The more the inspection there is, the less you trust the other side. If there's no trust, there can be no basic agreement. And what you're doing is you're papering over a situation. And this is the problem that Israel is facing at the moment. We've heard this afternoon that the previous policy of the United States has failed over the years. I would like, with all due respect to Steve, who I highly respect, to offer a slightly different perspective of what has happened as a result of policy over the years. He said, and I think rightly so, that on 2 occasions the Iranians suspended enrichment. And the question is why? Just out of goodwill? They suspended enrichment. They suspended enrichment because they found it in their interest not to pursue enrichment at those particular points in time. And they suspended enrichment because they were under pressure, or they perceived the possibility of such pressure that they would not wish to encounter, and they would not wish to challenge. And therefore, I believe that going back to the famous or infamous, if you like, NIE, the National Intelligence Estimate of 2006, I think it was, 5, 6, 7, yes, in which the NIE said that they believed that the Iranians were people who behaved logically, and that they took logical decisions, and I think they do, by the way. They took logical decisions. And they took a logical decision because they feared pressure. So let us not think that pressure is something of days gone by. An article published yesterday by the Leverett couple, and I commend it to you, claims that the United States' new policy of the Obama administration has already failed. And it offers a series of interesting analyses of why it has failed. And I recommend you to go back to your computers and look it up, because the first 2 days that this article is published, you can still look at it without being necessarily being forced to pay to subscribe to it. So you can see it free today. And that's a gratuitous offer of mine. But they claim there that the policy has failed, and therefore, to some extent, they offer a policy somewhat along the lines that Steve and Paolo have suggested, which means to say, in effect, to put into effect the basic rule of war of the ancient Chinese warrior and military theoretician Sun Tzu, that the best way to win a war is to win all your objectives without firing one shot. Let us give the Iranians more or less what they want, except maybe the destruction of Israel. Maybe they don't want it, but we won't offer them that yet. But we will offer them most of what they want. And the price, as Steve said, is going to be very high. And we'll pay them. And we'll pay them this price. And we will see to it that they will keep their bargain, because we will have inspection on the site. Where will we pay them? Will we recognize them as a hegemon in the entire region? Will we recognize their hegemony in Syria, in Lebanon? Are we going to recognize their rights to foment trouble in the northeastern parts of Saudi Arabia? Are we going to justify and let them proceed and continue with this undeclared war with Israel in a conventional manner, and to accept them as acceptable members of the not only international community, but also as part of the security arrangements in the region? Are we going to accept them as a major figure in regional security? Because that's what they want. They don't only want economic advantages, to the best of my knowledge. Are we going to offer them this? Are we going to give them this? I don't believe that this is a viable policy. A, because I really don't think the United States is going to go that way. And I really don't believe that President Obama wants to go that way. He has differences of opinion, obviously, with the current government of Israel. I also have my differences with the current government of Israel. I suppose a couple of people here have their differences too. But this doesn't go as far as to cut the ties between Israel and the United States, which have kept them together for so long in a large variety of areas. And I don't want to repeat this litany of common values and so forth. It goes far beyond that. President Obama will never, in my view, forsake Israel. He might be critical of Israel, he might pressure Israel, he might do all kinds of things to Israel. He will not forsake Israel. I don't believe so, in any manner. I don't think he wants to, or he will wish to. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say something else. I believe, and I've said this before on many other occasions, I'll say it here this afternoon, that it will not be possible to reach an understanding, a resolution, even a partial resolution, of the problem with Iran on the nuclear issue without Israel being part of this ultimate understanding. A, because we are one of the principal potential targets of what the Iranians might wish to do. And B, because despite all the failings which we have in many other areas, in every possible confrontation that we've had with the Iranians over the last 3-4 years, they've emerged with a bloody nose. We had a war in Lebanon in 2006, the outcome of which is a subject of public debate in Israel and in the world in general, even to this day. One issue or one aspect of this war is not in dispute, and that is in the first 48 hours, Israel destroyed all the strategic missiles that the Iranians had deployed in Lebanon. And the Iranians said nothing about it. They kept mum. They kept their mouths shut. But they know the truth. They not only know that their missiles were destroyed, but they also must understand that the Air Force, which was given the task, was also given very, very, very accurate targets which they could find. Secondly, when it came to the fighting in Gaza, and it came to the Hamas, which was hard-pressed, very hard-pressed, and let there be no mistake about it, the Hamas suffered a debilitating blow in Gaza in January. There were other aspects of the war in Gaza, but as far as the military aspect is concerned, let there be no mistake. The Iranians were incapable of lifting a finger to save the forces of the Hamas in Gaza. And they did not do so. Not only they did not do so, their other proxy, the Hezbollah, did not do so. And this message has not gone unnoticed in the region. And the third lesson which they received was when they believed that they could send supplies through a distant land in Sudan. According to foreign reports, as we say in this country, those supplies didn't reach their destination and they were destroyed to the last gun and to the last missile and rocket there, somewhere in the deserts of eastern Sudan. And this was an Iranian setback. And they know it. And they know it very well. And they must know that this was not only the result of an accurate attack, but again, if there was an attack, and if the Air Force, whoever Air Force it was, got the mission, it also got the necessary information to find what had to be found. And the Iranians realize, in my opinion, that in this confrontation with Israel, it is not a win-win situation for them. And Paolo and Steve, you have spoken about your visits to Tehran. I have not visited Tehran in recent years. I would very much like to. And if you can arrange it, I would be happy to come with you.
I can bring you there.
But I would like to say this, ladies and gentlemen, that I've met many people who've been in Tehran, not only Steve and Paolo, whose reporting and whose advice I highly value. But others who have been there tell me that speaking to Iranians, there is a deep fear of two things in Tehran. There's a deep fear of Israel. And let there be no doubt about it. The Iranians, in their confrontations with Israel, have come off second best. And there is also a deep fear of the dialogue with the United States. They're doing everything in their power to avoid a dialogue. Because once they sit across the United States, they know that this is the last train to San Fernando. And either you get it or you don't. And there is a price to be paid for failure. And I'd like to suggest the following, as an Israeli. I believe that it would be almost impossible for the Obama administration to risk failure in this dialogue. I think the price for failure is almost inadmissible. But I believe that the price of failure of dialogue with the United States for Tehran is higher, much higher. Because whatever they say about equality between the United States and Iran, nevertheless, when they sit together, I'm not sure that the United States of Iran feels that it is equal to the United States of America in firepower and in economic power and in other aspects. They know their limitations because, as we said, they're logical people. And I believe that if the United States conducts its dialogue in a professional way, in a determined way, in a clever way, and I have great faith in the intelligence of the United States of America, and I mean intelligence, this intelligence, and not the other intelligence. Not that I don't have faith in the other intelligence, I have faith in them too, but I'm talking intelligence in this sense. We in this country, you know, we often tend to overestimate our brain power and here and there to underestimate other people's brain power. I suggest to you that we assume that, for argument's sake or for the purpose of our discussion this afternoon, that the brain power in the United States of America is at least equal to the brain power in Tel Aviv University. At least. Maybe slightly more. Pardon? No, I'm not. I'm not at all. I've seen United States negotiators in action. I've been on the other side of a negotiation, Steve. Believe me. And it hasn't been a picnic. And I've, on occasion, not emerged smiling. That I can tell you too. And in retrospect, I relished it. But that's a personal comment. I'd like to say one last thing. People talk in this country about Iran being an existential threat. I mean, we have to say the word existential threat because if I don't say it, you know, I will be found wanting. The future ambassador of Israel to the United States, Oren, who is well known in the United States, published an article in Commentary magazine a few weeks ago. And again, I commend it to you. Another couple of days and you'll have to pay for it. And in this article, he spoke about 7 existential threats to Israel. He said there are 7 existential threats, and he lists them on 7 pages. And we have this tendency to talk of an existential threat. I believe the Iranian threat is a very serious threat. It's a very, very serious threat. Probably one of the most serious threats we've ever met. But ladies and gentlemen, let's, in this hall at least, be a little more self-confident. And let's realize that Israel is indestructible. It's a very strong country. It doesn't have to shake in fear. And it can take its decisions. It can also be a very dependable ally. It has been. And therefore, it is not always necessary to lean backwards in order to placate the Iranians. I'm not sure that placating the Iranians is good policy. I would say more, that if I recall those years in which I did visit the bazaar in Tehran, I never tried to placate the rug trader. Really not. And I think that it would be a mistake to placate the rug trader in Tehran, even if these days he wears the turban of a mullah. Thank you.
Thank you.